You're invited to imagine what's next. What the next view you wake up to will be. Where your next adventures will start from. Your perfect space to entertain. And your sanctuary to unwind in. As you begin to imagine your new place, we'll be here to help you find it. Because nothing compares to what's next. Sotheby'sRealty.com.
The world celebrated the Earth Day on 22nd April. Brands and companies not only showcased all that they were doing to make their businesses sustainable, some even ramped up their commitments. Today on the Property Show, we put India's residential sector under the spotlight and ask, are we really working as fast as we should on making this sector sustainable? After all, residential or housing segment makes up for 75% of India's real estate and only 25% is office or commercial. Yet, when it comes to counting our achievements on green sustainable buildings, we mostly celebrate the office sector. I couldn't have asked for a better panel. Kamal Sagar, CEO of Total Environment, a company that has wowed Bengaluru's housing market with its environment-integrated, thoughtfully designed housing projects. Also with us, Manit Rastogi from Morphogenesis, an architecture firm which is known to raise the bar of sustainable buildings. And Dr. Priyanka Kochar, former TERI and now an independent consultant who deep dives into the subject matter, and that will be of real value add on today's discussion. Okay, let's start straight away. Kamal, I'm going to start on a positive note. Your company has set benchmarks on sustainable projects, even though you don't really term them as sustainable or try and get a rating for them. They're more, one with the environment. But give us some sense of what do you do and what has worked for you to really, raise the benchmarks on sustainability in your housing projects.
So I think in our case, it really stems from this desire to embrace nature and to connect homes, even in high-rise buildings, with nature. So everything originated from that belief that a home is not really a home if it doesn't connect with a garden, even if it's an apartment on the 14th floor. And really the whole idea was, how do we bring that, blur the boundaries between the indoors and the outdoors and create that sense of connection, because every human desires to connect with nature. And of course, everything else follows from there. The fact that buildings merge the kind of materials that we use to blend with the surroundings, so exposed brick or concrete, and then I think from there we went on to do things like use green roofs, use geothermal energy, use heat pumps, and so all kinds of things to make everything much more sustainable in the long run. Because if you want to embrace nature and if you love nature so much, then we also need to protect it and make sure that it's around for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. So it comes really more from that. We didn't have this need to get our buildings rated and all of that. We were not looking for certification. We just wanted to do what we felt was good. Though eventually we did recently get one of our buildings rated, and it did get a platinum rating for everything that we naturally do in all our buildings.
All right.
So we're happy to have done that as well.
That's Songs from the Woods in Pune, which has got a platinum rated. And of course, some of the things like green roofs equipped with automatic sensor-based irrigation systems, etc. Extremely interesting on how you've pushed on that front. Before I go on to Manit, I'm going to talk a little bit about ratings now. India isn't lagging at all on, green buildings. So if you look at the total number of green buildings or rated buildings, in 2022, we left Canada behind to climb to number 2 position in US green buildings list of 10 countries for certification. Now, if I look at the statistics, overall, we are now number 2 only to China. This is outside of the United States. And of course, the other points will flash out in terms of what really does this mean? This annual ranking actually recognizes countries on various parameters of sustainability, whether it's operational or otherwise. Manit, the question is not whether, we have enough green certified buildings or not. Our rankings are looking great. But we all know, you and I know, that most of this stock that we are talking about, 10 plus million gross area square meters, is really in the office and commercial space. And residential is the big elephant in the tent that we still need to address.
No, agreed, Manisha. Also at one level, we have to be proud of the fact that India has gone ahead and done a lot in the space of green buildings. However, is it enough? Answer is no. And that's quite straightforward. Like you rightfully said, the residential sector is lagging far behind, and there's a simple reason for that. The end user does not recognize green rating as the fundamental objective of when they go to buy an apartment. We are still at a point where getting reasonably priced, affordable, by me, affordable, I don't mean cheap, I mean appropriately affordable housing is a challenge in the right location. In addition to that, complex bylaws, where the emphasis is placed on built-up areas, FARs, parking requirements, where nearly 1/3 to sometimes half the built-up area is subterranean, which is substantially ridiculous because we're spending that many resources to park cars as much as to provide living spaces for people. So, by and large, the scope of green buildings as defined today, we'll have to redefine it. We have to move away from the Western notion of what is a green building, which, in the Western world, it's largely most residential buildings are centrally heated, are centrally air conditioned, which is not the case in the Indian environment. We've come up with our own, not a rating system, but our own metric-driven design system based around 4 pillars. So one, of course, sustainability. I won't talk much about that. But second is optimization. Typically in any residential building, there are 13 critical subsystems between structure, MEP, facade, vertical transportation, etc., etc. And how do you begin to optimize each of them? How do you begin to make housings look more unique and more in sync with climate and nature? Housing projects across India in different climatic zones are beginning to look identical. And that is ridiculous because that's a clear indication of the thrust is to adapt to bylaws rather than to adapt to local regions, local communities, local lifestyles. Right. And of course, the fourth and critical metric is livability. And in the livability context, one cannot detach the user from the building. Now, green buildings tend to put a lot of focus on the physical, but not on the livability aspect. So there are many factors that will go into creating a unique rating system for the Indian housing sector that is more relevant to us.
Well, those are some very important and thoughtful points that you've raised that, currently the rating systems that we have, they're pretty much standardized across housing projects and office and commercial projects. There's not much of a difference. They basically earmark how much are you saving on energy, how much are you saving on water, how much are you doing waste segregation, waste to landfills. And based on that, they give you a rating and, you're either rated gold or a platinum or, below that, I don't even think it matters anymore. But I'm going to come back to you for some suggestions a little bit later in the show. I just want to go to Priyanka and say, Priyanka, but there is this larger movement also which is missing. For example, we're talking about complex bylaws, but there are certain urban local authorities and states who have tried to encourage builders from adopting at least even the basics of green sustainable buildings by giving things like, incentives like extra floor area ratio or a rebate in property tax. Even that does not seem to motivate developers even to go for the basics. So what's missing? What are we missing here?
That's true. So the key reason that people provide, one of the reasons is that there is an upfront incremental cost. And while I do agree there may be some percentage of the cost, there are lots of municipalities across the country, about 19 of them, that have taken initiatives to subsidize that incremental cost. And depending the framework, the institutional framework which is available at the local level, there are FAR incentives and there are property tax rebates. But the challenge in mainstreaming that is that a lot of people say in the north have availed the FAR incentive, but there is not enough manpower or there are not enough resources available to go and validate that at the end of the project, right? To ensure that the incentive that has been availed also meets the requirements that it was designed for. And in the southern and the western part of the country, largely one has got a feedback that people are not aware of the property tax rebates. So I think lack of awareness and lack of strong implementation of the incentives pose a challenge. Another challenge in a place like Delhi would be, or Mumbai for that matter, that extra FAR is not required at all. That is not something which the projects can even consume. So while designing incentives or disincentives, I think there needs to be a little more thought also on whether these incentives are required, and how does one ensure ongoing compliance, or that people maintain the properties that they purchase or that they live in. I think that is where the
very important
main
point
issues
that you've raised, because I've actually seen there are projects which have got the ratings and their solar rooftops are, rooftop solar panels are just languishing, rainwater harvesting pits are clogged. So Kamal, I'm again going to ask you one question. How is it that you're able to charge a premium? I mean, total environment projects are something which are sought after in Bengaluru, and the consumer is willing to pay for it. How did you manage that? Some takeaways for other developers.
So actually, it's a misunderstanding that we charge a premium. We do not charge a premium. There are 2-3 things. One is our carpet area ratio to the saleable area ratio is much higher because we follow a standard. When we started out, we felt that this was all over the place, this whole concept of super built up area. So with the result that the price does appear to be a little higher, but if you divide it by if you compare on a carpet area basis, then you'll find it's not really significantly higher. Okay. Secondly, because of the fact that the homes come completely furnished, completely fitted out and everything else, so the scope and what you're getting is very different. You know, it's not the same as what you're getting from somebody else. So it's not really a premium. It does cost more, but it's not a premium.
Okay.
And the third thing is that our homes are also larger. We don't do, so we have a minimum bedroom size of say 12 feet by 14 feet because that's what is required for, the wardrobes and the bed and everything to fit in comfortably. So every space has got a certain minimum size. So the units start at around 2,500 square feet for a 3-bedroom as against a lot of developments which have 1,600 square feet and stuff. So the ticket size is higher. The per square foot cost is a little bit higher because of those 2 reasons I told you. And because of all of that, it sounds like there's a premium, but it's not really a premium. They're just more expensive.
I think I should reword it. It's aspirational and, a very aspirational product in the market that you operate. All right. I'll come back to you. Priyanka, very quickly, if you were to give, 3 suggestions to move the needle on, we've kind of come to the basic issues here, but how do we accelerate the movement? Do you have certain suggestions?
So one, I think, is that the end user should be incentivized. Home loans could be designed and the financial sector could be mobilized so that they are able to give some benefits to the end user and to create demand. Second, of course, is that compliance should be more stringent. So I can think of only RERA that has teeth, and perhaps RERA could consider, the state-wise implementation could consider incorporation of green. How they identify green or define green is totally up to them, or they could seek inputs from people. And the third continues to remain strengthening education and creating awareness. I think at the RWA level or at an individual house level, the students have a key role to play. And not only in implementing, but also in influencing people around them. So if this could be taken up in schools and colleges, curriculum could be designed so that they are able to intervene and ensure ongoing maintenance. I think that would be impactful.
And in fact, just making people aware of the, cost benefit over the life of the project rather, even if there is a little bit of an upfront cost here. Manit, suggestions from you. You said, look, this rating system cannot be one size fits all. There are differences in geographies. There are differences between us and, let's say, United States of America. And yes, if you look at Leeds, it's probably has exactly the same specifications. So give me your thoughts on how to make this better.
So we need a 3-pronged approach. One has to be at the level, of course, of the government. One, we have to stop looking at city level master plans. That's a very, very restrictive way of trying to master plan a development. We need to look at a master plan of India on a 100-year horizon. We have to be able to identify regions where we should be building our cities, where we should be having habitations for people. We are going to become the world's most populous nation. And we have to recognize the fact that with climate change, our coastal belts are going to be highly prone to disaster. Our northern belt is in any case highly prone to earthquakes. And we have to begin to identify a mix of how transportation systems, rivers, ecology, climate, terrain, and where habitation is going to take place over a 100-year horizon, and then break that back to 50 years, 20 years, 10 years, and then to local level master plans. Until we have a grander vision, a long-term view, we are only going to be trying to deal with the symptom of the disease and not the disease itself. That's one. Second, we need to begin to, again, bylaws need to modify themselves to adapt to how we live. There are many states in India today that put open areas for, so every bylaw says that you need a certain amount of open area on your site plan. That's great. But when it comes to the apartments, the built up area, there are many that say that balconies and terraces are in FAR, which forces developers to minimize on outdoor open spaces. And further, in some developments in Mumbai, you can't even open there is no balcony, there is no outdoor space.
Right.
Benefits need to be given to adapt and promote developers to create habitation spaces that are suitable for the young, the old, in terms of being able to give a lot of leeway in these open spaces in apartments and building design. And of course, developers at the same time have to make sure they're not loading that to super area, as Kamal rightfully said, because, it's a chicken and egg problem.
Right.
And then we begin to, really get the notion of having bungalows in the sky, because density will go up. So that's the second. And third, it comes down on the user. Now, inherently, all Indians, as far as I know, and most that I know, are not people who waste. We save everything. If anything comes in a plastic box to our house, we don't just throw the plastic away. We tend to recycle it. We try to use it. And that's in our DNA. And we need to be able to promote that. We need to be able to create that sense of consciousness, not by bringing in policies to implement on people, but to bring it as part of education from kindergarten up. So we need to have subjects in the school that deal with sustainability, that deal with the consciousness, rather than putting children into air-conditioned schools and making that considered premium. We should be doing completely the reverse. So a consciousness that runs through is very important.
All right.
And that's what happened in the office sector, the commercial sector. When the MNCs came and said we want green-rated buildings, all developers gave green-rated buildings. And that is why we have that. When the users start demanding, we will get that as well.
Fair enough. I'm going to wrap out here because it's been a very interesting discussion and very solid takeaways on what we can do. Kamal Sagar, Manit Rastogi, Priyanka Kochar, thank you very much for joining me today. Well, as a country, we have a net zero carbon emission target to meet by 2070, and I don't think we can get there without making India's housing sector green and sustainable. On the other side, an exciting new startup in office interiors design space which promises to take care of all your office needs from plans to materials to execution. Stay with us.
You're invited to imagine what's next. Well, the next view you wake up to will be where your next adventures will start from. Your perfect space to entertain. And your sanctuary to unwind in. As you begin to imagine your new place, we'll be here to help you find it. Because nothing compares to what's next. Sotheby'sRealty.com.